The craziest coaching carousel in college football history got even crazier on Sunday, and the trickle down effect's going to hit Houston soon.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougars, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, and whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Making the Locked On Sports Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network in the world. Here to tell you all about this coaching carousel going on today, but given that the carousel is a fair ride, you just don't know what to say, but you want to join the conversation down below, tell us what you like to do at a fair or carnival or the rodeo down in the comments section. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Best place to get into the action in person. Talk more about them later, I promise. But if you want to get into the bowl game, bowl season, if you're in Arlington, want to get a Big 12 championship game, whatever the case may be, hit up Game Time to get in the action today. Now, this coaching carousel is what I'm talking about throughout the duration of the show today, but the carousel itself is the first section, how that trickles into recruiting and transfers, and ultimately how each of these things hits Houston is going to be kind of the mode of the show today. So a little free-flowing and stuff like that, but if you were not paying attention to college sports, watching the Texans or what have you, the Rockets, whatever on Sunday, the coaching carousel in college football went from crazy to craziest very quickly. Lane Kiffin held Ole Miss kind of at feeling like gunpoint almost, like the way he held things down with them. He waited until the 19th hour to tell them he was leaving officially. Mulled over LSU and Florida offers. Waited till after the Egg Bowl was over to make his decision on Saturday night, the Iron Bowl, I should say, on Sunday night, because that ultimately decided that Ole Miss was not going to be in the SEC title game. He's taking the LSU job, formally announced later in the day on Sunday. That's down a ripple effect where, like, he kind of drew a line in the sand, said, if you're not coming with me now to LSU, you're not leaving Ole Miss with me to go to LSU to the coaches and players. Some coaches left, some coaches didn't. They promoted their defense coordinator to not just interim, but actual head coach. Meanwhile, the ripple effect of that was that then Florida, who thought they had a shot at Lane Kiffin, hired John Sumrall from Tulane. More on that in a second. And that meant that Auburn could not get John Sumrall. So they went and got the guy from South Florida. And all these things start to ripple out. Meanwhile, at some point, the Stoops brother at Kentucky got fired. Like things just keep happening with all of this. Now, Tulane is looking for their own coach, and South Florida is going to be looking for their own coach. North Texas lost their coach to Oklahoma State, but each of these Group of Five programs is going to let their coach finish the bowl season portion of their schedule. And some of those might actually have a chance at the college football playoff along the way there. And this is all spiraling. Now, what's interesting is obviously, like, it's fun to laugh at Baylor for saying they're going to hold firm with diamond hands on Dave Aranda. They should have fired him 2 years ago when Houston fired Dana Holgorsen after beating Dave Aranda in McLean Stadium. Ultimately, they did not do that. And so 2 years later, they're holding on still to Dave Aranda. They're not getting rid of him because they have their own college athletic director chaos happening. They have to replace their athletic director, and the speed with which they have to do all that means they'd probably miss this window that they're in right now. But look, what's happening here is that now Tulane, South Florida, North Texas, these other schools are all going to be needing to fill vacancies. Those staffs are going to be pulling from others and so on. And at Tulane, the odds came out, and one of the people kind of with good odds to get an interview and maybe get that head coaching job is Houston's offensive coordinator, Slade Nagle. It is not so many degrees of separation away from him. Obviously, he was the offensive coordinator there at Tulane when Fritz was there, right? And they did well there. They were successful there. And he understands the region. He's a Louisiana guy. That makes total sense, right? And he was a part of Houston getting to 9 wins this season. I'm sure that'll all factor in, right? For what it's worth, Lane Kiffin's going to fill out a defensive staff, and He's got ties to a bunch of different people, and I don't know who he's going to pull from what staffs, but Houston's defense has been good for 2 years, right? And who's they going to pull and where are they going to pull from? I don't think Willie's going anywhere. I don't know that Austin Armstrong is either. But I do think that you're going to see assistants get pulled for promotions or analysts become position coaches and stuff across college football. The Fritz Magic's going to have some people trying to dive into it. I don't know where from, and I don't know how high a profile, but people are going to want pieces of it. In fact, you could see a Houston defensive position coach get something like a defensive coordinator job, one of these G5s that are also losing their guy. Like this is a natural scene of events. This trickle down is going to get to Houston at some point. And if that means Nagle goes to LSU, or not LSU, if Nagle goes to Tulane in the fallout as their head coach, my hot take is I think that's actually good for Houston. And I don't mean that to say that I don't think Nagle did a decent job this year. Were there times I would have called something different? Sure. Were there times I thought, like, hey, we should be like force feeding Amari Thomas the ball? Yeah. Were there times I was like, hey, Tanner Cozy on the catch here? Sure. Across the board, though, that's not why I think this is good for Houston. I actually think that there are a lot of worse offensive coordinators out there that Houston could have had instead of Slade Nagle last year, and they didn't have them, right? They had Slade. The head coaching job at Tulane, because of Fritz, has become a coveted G5 job. This is the second straight Tulane head coach to get a Power 4 job right out of Tulane. If you're looking to step up your career, it's a very good spot to get to, and that would be what Slade Nagle is doing. If that's what a good coaching projection will do, is to go from an office coordinator here to a head coach there to a head coach, like so on and so forth, the trickle effect. You're going to have a lot of offensive coordinators knocking your door because they see what your last guy got hired to do. They see the tools you got in the tool shed with Connor Wegman and some of those receivers, the young receivers. They're also going to see the guys you have coming in the 2026 recruiting class. I want a chance to get to coach Keisean Henderson and all those different receivers, Paris Melvin and the like. Like, suddenly, it's an attractive job for an offensive football coach to come in and work. You also know that Willie Fritz is a defensive guy. And while he wants to run the football, you're going to have a lot of leeway in your offense because Fritz is a defensive-minded coach. And he's had his guys and guys he's worked with and whatever. You probably need to know him a little bit. But once you get to know him a little bit, I think that you're going to have a lot of reign on the offense side of the ball with a lot of tools and a lot of investment in the last 2 years into football. We've seen athletics becoming much, the new facility and all that. Like, things are trending in the right direction. I also think if we continue to look at the men's basketball program as like a blueprint for like how success can snowball at the University of Houston. You've seen it work, right? And you've seen how that can work. You also would then get to recruit Houston area and the Houston hotbed that is. Like, all of that would be very attractive. You had a great set of candidates at offensive coordinator. You also, bluntly, with all these coaches getting fired at these various places, have a bunch of offensive minds out there to go pick from. And I think that is all to say that if Slade were to get the job, good for him. He should take a head coaching job. If he doesn't, good for Houston. They'll be fine either way, right? And I do think that trickle down impacts Houston. Now, I also think it impacts Houston in other ways, and that's the players. I want to talk about that in just 1 second. Before we get there, today's show is brought to you, as I mentioned at the top, by Game Time, because the World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, since Houston was in the Southwest Conference, frankly. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be a massive World Cup. But let's be honest, getting tickets is going to be the hardest part. And that's why Game Time is clutch, giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops, get real-time game alerts, great seats open up, you find them right away. Buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands, making going to the World Cup a very realistic option instead of just some impossibility. You get to see exactly what you're going to see from your seat views with the app itself, see exactly what the view will look like from that section and row. You also can see different teams and matches as they get assigned. You also can see, frankly, all the pricing, all the fees are right there in front of you. There's no secret when you hit checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and make every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. That's promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Download the app. Make an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Parker into Locked on Coogs here, and we're talking about all these coaches moving. It's also signing week. It's also a big week in college sports. Guys are going to be signing this week. And while they're doing that, you're going to have Keisean Henderson sign the Houston Cougars this week, Paris Melvin, all these guys, early signing period to sign now, especially if they're trying to get into school in the spring. Like, it's a fun week, right? But while they're doing that, all this coaching chaos is also happening. And so suddenly, guys that thought they were going to play for one coach at Tulane aren't playing for that coach at Tulane, or guys that thought they were going to play for Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss are not going to be playing for Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. And they've only got a few days to figure this out. And frankly, schools that they might have had on their top 5 have already had commitments at the same positions and already had NIL dollars promised out. And those things may feel infinite, but even at the biggest blue bloods are finite. And these are all suddenly putting all these kids in a loop. Now, theoretically, the kids, if we use Lane Kiffin as an example, the kids that he covets the most at Ole Miss, he would carry their offer over to come play for him at LSU as well, theoretically. But it's not a given. It's not a for sure thing. And look, there are plenty of kids that had Houston in their top 5s and 6s that committed to LSU, Auburn, Florida, Tulane, even Baylor after the down year they've just had. We saw Baylor lose 2 of their top 2 recruits, including a kid from Waco, within hours of losing to Houston on Saturday, right? This is all a lot of chaos. And I would point out that Ole Miss, as the time of recording, has 3 commits planning to sign this week from the state of Texas. Florida has 2, notably Davian Gross, who had Houston in his top 4. Davian was looking at Houston, Baylor, Oklahoma, and Florida. Florida just changed head coaches to John Sumrall. I don't know if that's someone he must play for or not. We will see. Baylor stinks. We just talked about how they lost 2 recruits and now within a couple hours losing to Houston. Oklahoma has recruited that position hard and already promised guys and already has guys committed at that exact same position. Look, NIL dollars are plenty at Oklahoma, but can they finagle things, move things around to bring in another guy at the same position? We'll see. Houston was high on his list. Houston lost Jaden Warren a week ago or so. What do you know? Like, who knows? Who knows how things work out there? Similarly, we just mentioned that Summerall went from Tulane to Florida. Tulane has 3 commits from Texas, and there's a lot of buzz around Trez Davis, who actually decommitted from Tulane, would have been the 4th one because Trez Davis has a long list of Power 4 offers. Well, he decommitted from Tulane, around the buzz of Summerall leaving popping up. At the time, that was to Auburn. Is he going to follow Summerall to Florida? That's further away. Like, what's he going to do? Whereas Houston was high on his list, has been on his list, and is much closer to home than all of that for him, right? Kentucky just fired the Stoops brother. They had previously had 4, now it's down to 3 commits from Texas. Damari Williams, an athlete from a JUCO who's visited Houston recently and just decommitted from Kentucky. Isaiah McMillan is a 4.4 speed athlete from Katy, still committed to Kentucky as the time is recording, but could decommit at any minute because the coaching staff changing means he's not sure who he's going to play for. You know what they are sure about? Willie Fritz is going to be at Houston. Houston's in the Big 12. Houston won 9 games. Houston's going to improve next year. Houston's got a great 2026 class. These guys could all come be a part of. Suddenly, grass is getting greener here in Houston for those guys to come to Houston, stay in Houston, whatever. I'm not saying I've got a whole lot of insight. I've texted some people, gotten some feelers out. Stuff is moving. What I will say, though, is that a highly vaunted 2026 class of Houston's is only getting more talented this week. The best in school history is only getting better this week, and that's a big deal. And frankly, you can say thank you to Lane Kiffin, thank you to John Sumrall, thank you to the ineptitude of Baylor and Auburn and these other places, because ultimately it all is going to come back to Houston. And much like we saw before with transfer portal guys and guys wanting to come home to play in Houston, those rosters are littered with guys presently on them from Texas. Some from Houston specifically, but certainly from the state of Texas. And those guys are going to be at least sticking their toes into the transfer portal to see what's out there because they don't know what it's going to be like to play for coaching staffs that they did not commit to. And this is, frankly, the intention of the transfer portal, right? Was coaches can come and go as they please. The kids need to kind of be able to do something the same. And so if all of a sudden, all these kids at Ole Miss, who has a handful of Texas kids on their roster, are like, I thought I was going to play for Kiffin. What's up, man? Maybe they got pissed off at Kiffin, don't want to go to LSU. Where am I going to go? Well, Houston's over here, right? LSU, hey, I signed up to play for Brian Kelly. I know he was going away. I don't really know that I fit into what Lane Kiffin's trying to do. Or, hey, I saw what he burned down over at LSU or Ole Miss. I saw what Kiffin burned down everywhere else he's been. I don't want to be a part of that. Where can I go? We got Houston, right? Like these guys from Texas that litter these rosters are going to be looking for new homes, and Houston's already a home. Look, I'm just sitting here saying that this is going to be a fast-paced week with a lot of stuff happening, and there are real names with real chances to really flip to Houston very, very soon. And I know I can already see like 3 usernames commenting on the video down below, but this guy's full of it. Oh, yeah, best since whatever. I can see them happening, and they're probably chuckling themselves at the references. But I'm telling you, this is a big deal. And that this is going to be a big week. And as big as the very sudden kind of Wigman signing with Houston or committing to Houston, I guess he signed actually a couple days later when it's allowed to commit to Houston at the end of the middle of the night in December, early December last year. There's gonna be moments like that this week. And Houston's got a real chance to have some of those themselves. Now, I know the transfer portal window, because I can already see the typing of this too, is technically open in January. But guys will announce their intention to join it early because, well, they cannot officially commit to anywhere and officially be signed on paper anywhere until later. They're going to do that much, much earlier to make sure that they get the best recruiting chance possible. And we're breaking it down and more here at Locked On Cougs every single day. So subscribe and the bell so you know when we go live. Locked On Cougs is primarily Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Go Cougs.